glasses here. Okay. Good evening. So I'd like to now go to some of the other malachas of Shabbos, having spent a considerable amount of time on Bishul and on Shia and Chazar and Hatmana and those inyanim. So what I'd like to begin discussing a little bit the malacha of Choresh, and I want to use that though as a springboard to discuss a little bit an Indian in Hilchos Shabbos, as we'll see. So the malacha of Choresh involves making soil more suitable for planting. That's what the malacha is. You're making the earth, the terrain, making it smoother, removing rocks and other types of substances that are there that are not conducive to for planting and for growth of crops, and filling in holes if there are. That's all part of the malacha of Choresh, as well as making a furrow, making furrows. If a person makes just simply making a furrow in the ground, a long, like a ditch, whatever, long and narrow, not too deep, but a ditch which is suitable for placing seeds into it. So that's part of the malacha of Choresh. And another thing is also pouring water onto soil. So if a person pours water onto soil which is intended for planting, and the planting will occur within an amount of time that the soil is still wet or still moist and still benefiting from that water that they poured onto it, then that's also Choresh. So now, as it seems that for many that if a person would pour water onto soil, and it's soil which there's not going to be nothing is going to be planted here, or even if it would be planted here, but it's not going to be planted here at a time where the moistening of the soil that you're doing now will have any effect on the growth, because once it dries completely, then it's the same as if it never happened. So you wouldn't be chayav. That wouldn't be the malacha altogether. Most things, if you do to the land, even if it's land that in reality nobody's going to plant there, but you made a change in the land which makes it more suitable for planting permanently unless it's reversed. But there's nothing about it; it's not going to automatically reverse itself. If you take you take pebbles out of the ground, or you smooth out the ground, and or you make a furrow. So these things are changes that you've made in the earth, which are now make the earth more suitable for planting. So even if as long as it's earth, the ground where outside where planting is feasible or is a possibility, even if nobody ever plants there, but that's considered Choresh. Whereas by watering the ground, the poskim say that it's something which is very temporary, and once it dries up, in a relatively short amount of time, or whatever the amount of time is, depending on how much you soak how much water you pour, how much you soak the ground. But when it dries up, eventually, which is something that occurs naturally, it's no longer of any benefit. So then that wouldn't be considered Choresh.
That's only on a bare ground, right? Like if you have grass, it's no problem.
Well, you have grass, it's a separate problem of Zorea, right? Or grass, or even pouring water on a soil where something could grow or is likely to grow, even if it's not growing yet, then that could be a problem of Zorea. I'm just specifically focusing, so what you're saying is true. I'm focusing on the malach of Choresh, and saying for the choresh, which is just preparing the soil, that's where we're making this distinction. Okay, now so let's talk about one halacha l'maisa, which is discussed under many Sfarim discuss this under this balach of choresh, and that is we said making furrows in the ground. We said is usher. If a person drags something on the ground which is very heavy, let's say something very heavy, a bench, a heavy metal bench with legs, which when you pull it, they churn up the soil, they kick up the soil by dragging them through the soil. The soil gets dislodged and pulled out of place, even though you have no desire to do that. You're not planning on planting there or anything, and you have really no desire for this furrow, or no intent even. But since it's a psik resha of that you're going to make a furrow, it's an inevitable consequence when you pull a bench that's very heavy. It's on the soil. It's inevitable that it'll make these furrows. So that's considered malechas choresh. Now it may not be something that you care about or something, but okay, we'll see about that. As opposed to if you pull something which is not so heavy, a bench or a chair or something else, which is not, could be the same item, just much lighter, and it's not, if it's for sure not going to make furrows, of course it's mutter, but even if it's not for sure, even if it's possible, you don't know exactly. It might depend on the, how fast you pull it, perhaps, or how much energy you exert. But there are certain variables that which you can't really measure. You can't really know for sure. I know that the bench is this, so heavy. I know for sure it'll make furrows. If it's less heavy, I don't know. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. So that's called a davar she'eino miskavin, and a davar she'eino miskavin is mutter on Shabbos. Okay, so now let's just leave that for a minute. This idea, I want to get back to one thing I want to discuss tonight about this concept of psik resha. But first I just want to bring up one halacha l'maisa, and that question is: so what about something which is much more nogea? What about pushing a baby carriage on Shabbos over soil, or a wheelchair? You could have a situation where a person in a wheelchair, or even a baby in a carriage, especially if it's not a tiny infant, where there's enough weight there that it also makes impressions, it makes indentations in the ground. If you're pulling the baby carriage over, so let's say you're outside in a place where there's an area, maybe in your own backyard, and you have proper mechitzas around your backyard, you're allowed to carry, or you may be out on the street somewhere where on streets or roads that are, or areas that are not paved, and it's you're making indentations in when you're pushing the person in the wheelchair. It makes grooves in the ground, or you pull a baby carriage, etc. So is that okay? And if so, why is that okay? Well, I think we know it's okay. I mean, we probably all assume that. Places where there's an area of people are commonly using strollers and baby carriages, etc., and plenty of people are being pushed in wheelchairs. And so you might say, well, maybe they're limiting them nowadays. We don't. Most of the streets are paved, and you could limit yourself to sidewalks and paves. But l'maisa, many poskim say you don't have to limit yourself. It is mutter. Many poskim say this, that it is mutter to push even a heavy carriage or wheelchair along an area where it will definitely make grooves in the ground. So why is it mutter? It's mutter because what's happening here is it's not uprooting the earth. It's not when you pull the wheelchair or the baby carriage, it's not uprooting the earth. It's compressing the earth. It's making grooves in the earth by packing down under the weight of the chair. Pushes down, presses down, and makes a groove, and that's what's called being kovesh the land, and that's based on a Gemara Mishnah, a Gemara in Maseches Beitz and Daf Chav Gimel, the poskim learn now from there that that's mutter to do. It's mutter to be kovesh the earth, to compress the earth or pack the earth down with something, as opposed to when you're pulling the bench or something where you're pulling up the dirt. You're not pushing it down. I mean, you're displacing it. You're dislodging the earth. That is the Isser of Chorish. The other way is not even Asur B'Drabanan. That is not Chorish to compact the earth. I suppose the pshat is because that's not the way you would plant. If you want to plant the adrab, you made the earth harder and more compressed. That's not so conducive to planting. Planting is you want to make the soil soft and more like flowery. Or what's the word? What I can't think better word for that.
Loose.
But loose, yeah, okay, thank you. So that's the Isser as opposed to what you're doing with the carriage. Now this halacha. Just to give a couple of makaros for this, first of all, you can look at the Sefer. There's a Sefer Pischei Tshuva on Orach Chaim. Now, I'm not referring to the contemporary Sefer Pischei Tshuvas. The Sefer Pischei Tshuva on certain Chalakim of Shulchan Aruch. We have on the page a Pischei Tshuva written by another Gadol from before the Second World War. And we have that on really on 3 Chalakim Shulchan Aruch. We have it in Yeridea, and have it in Ezer, and Choshen Mishpat. We don't have it in Orach Chaim. If you open up Shulchan Aruch Orach Chaim, there is no Pischei Tshuva on the daf. But there is another sefer written by someone else, not by the same mechaber, a thin sefer called Pischei Tshuva, and you see it quoted here and there. I happen to have the sefer, so I saw this quoted. I looked it up. The Pischei Tshuva in Siman Shin Lamed Zayin, Sif Aleph. Brings this halacha from a sefer called Mitzudos Yisachar. What's the sefer Mitzudos Yisachar? I'm not personally familiar with the Mitzudos Yisachar, and I didn't make any effort to research who that is. But he quotes this halacha from the sefer Mitzudos Yisachar. In the sefer Chut Shani from Rav Nissen Karelitz, in the first chelak on Shabbos, Perikut Aleph, page Tzadi Hey, he brings this from the Chazon Ish. That's all. He said the Chazon Ish. He writes there that in Bnei Brak, originally people back in the time of the Chazon Ish was nifter in the mid-50s, so he lived in Eretz Yisrael from probably I think like maybe the late 30s till the mid or late 30s till the mid-50s when he was nifter. And during those years, probably very common that there were unpaved roads, maybe more unpaved than paved. And people were monea. People refrained from taking out carriages and strollers because they were afraid that there's this issue of pulling, just like you can't pull a bench, you can't do this. And the Chazon Ish held not like that. He held that it's not a problem based on what we said. This is considered kovish, the land as mutter. But he brings there, Nissen Karelitz, and the Chut Shani brings that, however, when the Chazon Ish, however, began to be mefakpeik on the kashrus of the Eruv in Bnei Brak, and he's concerned that it was usher to carry, and if it's usher to carry, it's usher to push a stroller or a baby carriage, because that's considered carrying. It's a form of carrying. So he was not mefarsim his heter. He didn't want to be mefarsim to people, not for Shabbos and not even for Yontif. I guess he means even for Yontif when there's no Isser to carry, you can carry within an Eruv, but he didn't want to be mefarsim because he wanted people who realize if he, but as far as Chorish is concerned, there's no difference between Shabbos and Yontif. So if he tells people, oh, it's fine on Yontif, you could do it because there's no problem. This is not called Chorish. Then I guess he was afraid that the people say, oh well, Mamela, if I hold the Eruv, I'm samech on the Eruv, so I'll do it on Shabbos as well. And the Chazon Ish didn't want that to happen because he personally felt he had his pikpukim on the Eruv, so he didn't want people to use the Eruv. So Mamela, he wasn't mefarsim, but be'etzim he held with his heter. I just will say parenthetically, we're here. What about a wheelchair? Is where there's no Eruv, right? Is it mutter for a person to be pushed in a wheelchair on Shabbos where there's no Eruv? So the answer is no. The answer is no different than a baby being pushed in a carriage or stroller. It is not mutter. There are perhaps some situations where it'll be mutter al yidei akum. We know that if a non-Jew pushes the person in the wheelchair, then it's a question of amir la'akum, that you're asking a non-Jew to do malacha for you. Now the malacha is in almost all cases only D'Rabbanan, because it's uncommon to have a Rosh Hashanah D'Oraisa nowadays. The majority of the places where we live, majority, not exclusive, but the majority of the places where we live is only Rosh Hashanah is only rather a Carmelis. I mean, it's not a Rosh Hashanah D'Oraisa. It doesn't certainly if you go with the Shita of Rishonim, that in order to be considered a Rosh Hashanah D'Oraisa, they have to be Shishim Ribu. If there's 600,000 people traveling on the streets daily, and that's basically what every community is somich on to build an Erev. You can't build an Erev the way we build Eruvim with towards the Pesach with posts and strings. You can't do that in a Rosh Hashanah D'Oraisa. That only works in a Carmelis. So every Erev, every communal Erev that we know of is being somich on the shita that our streets are not Rosh Hashanah D'Oraisa because we don't have 600,000 people, and because the other shita of what defines Rosh Hashanah D'Oraisa, we don't, it wouldn't work. But and there are some places. This is the tumult in certain areas that perhaps there are, or for sure are 600,000 people, in which case an Erev is useless. But anyway, the average place where according to many Rishonim, it's only Carmelis D'Rabbanan. So then to have a non-Jew push the person in the wheelchair would be a shvus to shvus, asking Goy to do it D'Rabbanan, and that's mutter under certain circumstances. It's not mutter typically, but it's mutter for a certain tzarich mitzvah and other things. So then it would get into where the person needs or wants to go. Is that enough of a tzarich mitzvah to allow it? I believe I once saw from Rav Shimon Schwab, Zichron Livracha, when he was the Rav in the end of his life, he was Rav in Washington Heights, in Manhattan, New York, where although there was some attempt at an error, but he didn't hold of it at all. He writes very clearly, he didn't hold of it at all. So of the particular Erev, but so he. Okay, I don't want to quote. I'm not sure if he's even relying on that, even if it's only one shvus. He had a shaila whether when he was the Rav of the community, and at the end of his life, he wasn't able to walk to shul. His walk, he wasn't physically capable of walking to shul. So he sent the shal to Shlomo Zalman Auerbach whether he could have a non-Jew push him to shul for l'tzarech harabim. So that might have even been, he might have been just even relying that even if it's only one D'Rabbanan, meaning just a mir la'akim, even on a malacha d'oraisa, which I think he held it was malacha d'oraisa there. But first of all, it's also tzchayno seis atzmo, and okay, the cheshbon is getting beyond what I intend to go into now. But in any case, so what I wanted to say though is be'etzem, pushing someone else in a wheelchair is definitely a malacha on Shabbos. It's the same malacha as pushing a baby in a carriage. The question is, can a person push themselves? Can a person who's capable of, willing to chair themselves, is that mutter? So Moshe writes that that's mutter, mamish mutter, even in a place you're not allowed to carry, because he's medama to a person who needs to walk with a cane or with crutches. The halacha is clear that if a person cannot walk around without crutches or without a cane, which means even indoors, in order to walk, they need the assistance of some device, a cane or crutches, so then they're allowed to walk outside with it too, even if it's just a Rabban D'Oraisa, because it's considered regal didei. It's a chelik of the person. Like he can't walk without it. He can't walk without it, so it's considered, like I said, regal didei. It's like his regal, and he's allowed to do that. If a person is capable of walking without it, can walk indoors, he doesn't use it. Just when he goes outside, he wants more stability, and he walks longer, and he doesn't he's a little bit more concerned. He doesn't have the safety of his house, so indoors he'll walk without any help. Not like he has to grope on the walls. Indoors he can walk around. When he goes out the house, he wants to take a cane. That's usher on Shabbos. Then you can't take a cane outside on Shabbos. That's considered carrying, unless there's an Erev. Unless that's a different story. But otherwise he can't use a cane or crutches. But if a person needs them even to walk inside, he can't walk. He can't get from point A to point B without some device, some assistance like that he's allowed to take him outside. So Rav Moshe held the same thing is true with a wheelchair. That a wheelchair is also regular day. It's instead of the crutches or the cane. There's a tshuva in the Har Tzvi where he's cholek on it. He says differently, because he says regular day has to be that it helps you walk, not that it gets you from point A to point B. but it helps you to walk from point A to point B. Then it's considered your regal, just like your raglayim allow you to walk. So now this crutch or this cane allows you to walk, but a wheelchair doesn't allow the person to walk. It just gives the person a ride from point A to point B. So even if he's pushing himself, the Harsvi says it's not mutter.
Then maybe you can extend that. Or Moshe says other things that might work, like an electric scooter or something like that.
Well, first of all, electric is, we're not discussing anything electric.
No, because it does work even if you said it works with Risa, right? Like you're saying if you can use it like in a...
But you can't, but only because it's not considered carrying. But you can't do other malachas. You can't use electricity for this.
If it's carrying, if the person is in a place, it's not a karmas, it's a regular deraisa.
But Ramesh says this is not called carrying. Just like walking with a crutch is not called carrying. It's not called carrying. It's like a chelik of the person. Just like working with a crutch is the crutch is considered his third leg. It's part of him. Right now it's like mamish the lamdas, but that's it's like a part of the person. It's not called carrying. Just like when you wear something, you're not carrying it. You're it's tuffle to you. It's buttle to you. Or tuffle to you. So the crutch is tuffle to him. It's like a chelik of him.
And so is the wheelchair.
So is the according to Ramesh, so is the wheelchair. So it's not good. But if he has to do any other malacha, he couldn't.
Then kind of chelik of him. Why not? Like
what?
Whatever he's using, why it's not part of the chelik, part of him, whatever it is.
No, chelik which just means therefore he's not carrying. What am I carrying? A wheelchair? No, just like I'm not carrying my nose. I'm not carrying the wheelchair.
If he doesn't get me to point A to point B, he's carrying me.
Oh, like the glass.
Well, glass is because I'm wearing it. It's not like I'm wearing it. It's tuffle to me, or a tachshit. It's a tachshit or a malbush. So here too, the wheelchair is he's according to Ramesh. He's wearing it. It's him. It's a part of him right now. But if he has to do malacha, that doesn't help. Therefore, it's not the act of carrying isn't happening here. But if he has to push a button to make the electric wheelchair, that he can't do it. I didn't mean electric wheelchair. I'm talking about a plain manual wheelchair.
Like, if you couldn't use that wheel, yeah, okay, that's
okay. We're only talking about the malacha of hotzah. There are Moshe it's not hotzah, but any other malacha would be a problem. I answer. Great. Yeah.
Well, in the Hearts, it says that for the case of a person without legs, they use hands to move on the ground. There's a case of the Mishnah there. What's the difference? Why isn't that?
Well, firstly, I mean, he's walking on his stumps, no? Over there.
I think there's two things. One is stumps, and others also has to use his hands.
Yeah, okay, but even there, but it's helping him move. He's physically moving. He's not sitting on a rolling device that's taking him. He is physically moving his body.
Meaning the heart holds as an extension of your body, and that's the head versus
Maybe you have to look there. I will admit that none of this was planned. This part, it's just one thing led to the other that we're discussing this. So what am I saying? I didn't prepare any of this. So I'll look up the end of these just as we're talking. These are things that came to mind. But getting back to what was planned, pushing the idea that pushing the stroller or pushing in a place where there is an Erev, or pushing the wheelchair in a place that there is an Erev along the dirt. So we quoted so far the Pischei Tshuva b'shem the Mitzudos Yisachar. We quoted the Chutsheni b'shem the Chazon Ish. It's also this heter appears in the Sefer Shmir Shabbos Kehilchos. In the New Madura, it's in Perach of Ches, Sif Mem Ches, and it's very clear there that Rosh Hashanah Zalman agrees to it because Rosh Hashanah Zalman, comments on there on a Nakuda, which maybe we'll see in a minute. So we have Rosh Hashanah Zalman behind it. Before most of these Svarim printed, before the Chut Shani was printed, before I don't know about Shabbat, whatever it is, but in the Sefer Hilchos Shabbos of Shimon Eider, in the first Chelek. Ha'ara Chaf Zayin, on the Malach of Charesh. If you take a look at the Malach of Charesh, maybe we could get it right here. It's on page 43, in the first chelik of Rav Shimon Eider's Sefer. Page 43, he brings this in Ha'ara Chaf Zayin. He quotes this from, amongst others, from Rav Moshe Feinstein. That's all. Chen Shamati Mipi Agoin Rav Moshe Feinstein. He writes here Shlita. That's Moshe Feinstein that he also is mad to this, and you could find this also. There's also a tshuva which writer as well as others quote in the Chelkas Yaakov it's now in the first. They redid the Hilchos Yaakov. It's in first Chelik Archaim Simin Kufnates, and it's also in another contemporary sefer in the Kovitz Halachas, which is the sefer of Psakim of Rosh Shmuel Kamenetsky Shlita, Chelik Beis of Shabbos, Perik Mem Gimel Sif Hey, amongst other places. So this heter appears in many places. That pushing, again, getting back to the Charish topic, that pushing a wheelchair or a baby carriage, even if it's for sure going to make grooves in the ground, it's mutter to do it. There's one nekuda though that they discuss in this, that some say that you should be careful though that when you turn, don't make sharp turns. In other words, don't get to the corner and then turn in place, because if you turn in place, then you could very well be pushing up earth. You're not pushing. You're using when you're making that turn, especially if the wheel's already in a little bit of a groove, and now you turn, so you may be pushing the earth right next to it, next to the wheel of the carriage or the wheelchair, and your taka might be dislodging it. So some say, that you have to be careful of, or at least when you turn, make sure it's not a psik reisha. Make wide turns. Keep rolling. Don't turn in place, but keep rolling. The Chutshani says over there to be careful that it shouldn't be a psik reisha, and some others discuss it in the Shmir Shabbos. This is the point I was alluding to in the Shmir Shabbos. There, in Ha'ara Kuf Gimel, he brings from Shlomo Zalman that you don't have to worry about it, even to go to the side, you don't have to worry about it. He gives Shlomo gives different svaras, different different things. Why he feels you don't even have to worry about it. It doesn't seem like it has to be on your mind at all, basically, according to Shlomo Zalman. But some say to be careful. Rav Nissen Karelitz also says to be careful if the soil is very wet. If it's moist or damp, then it could be also you'll be dislodging it rather than just compressing it.
If it's muddy.
If it's muddy, right? Then you may be dislodging it. Then there's something to be careful about. That shouldn't be a psik reisha.
In a case,
Say again.
If a person goes on the swale in front of a regular house, and you push a carriage and it's all muddy and it's all messed up, now it pushes it up. It's a mess. It's not what you want to happen to your swale. Is that?
Okay, but if you make a chritz that way, if you make a chritz by dislodging soil, then that is part of the Yisr of Charish.
Even though no one wants to do it.
Yes, but if it's a psik reisha, if the thing that you're pushing is heavy enough, that's a psik reisha.
in the case when somebody is pushing something, the case of the psik reisha, where they're gonna make it yes or yes, even if the ditch is gonna be detrimental for the land, it's forbidden. So let's say it's my line, it's flat, it's the bare ground, and by pushing the table, I know I'm gonna make a ditch, but it's gonna be detrimental. I'm gonna have to fix it.
Right. It's still asur lechatchila to do it. It won't be an issur d'oraisa. In any case, this won't be, but it would still be asur midrabanan to do it. Okay. Now, So now let's go back to the Gemara talks about it in a couple of places. The idea that on Shabbos, davar she'einu miskaven, if I'm doing one act intentionally, I'm doing an act, and the act I'm doing and the result that I'm intending for is permissible on Shabbos, but something else may also result, which is not permissible. It may end up something else may happen based on my because of my action, or as a direct, and I mean indirect, as a direct result of my doing this. So I run by a candle, let's say, right? There's a candle burning, and I'm running. I just want to get from point A to point B. I have no interest in putting out the candle, but I'm running by it in a way that it may blow out. It may blow out. So that's called a davar she'einu miskaven. I'm not mechaven. I'm not trying to blow it out, but it's something that might happen. Or let's say a certain case where a person has a splinter, which if he tries to pull it out, it may bleed. Not to take a needle and dig in a way that he's afka bleeding, but to dislodge the splinter, and it may draw blood, or may not. So that's called a davar she'einu miskaven, and it's mutter, because as long as I'm not mechaven for the malacha, what I'm mechaven for is dislodging the splinter, which is inherently mutter, or running is mutter. Well, running for a dvar mitzvah, at least that's mutter. It's certainly no malacha. Running, even if it's usher and Shabbos, it's not a malacha. And I'm a chavim for a dvar heter, and a dvar isser might result. So the halacha is that that's mutter on Shabbos. The machlokas Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Shimon, we passing like Rabbi Shimon, Dav Hashem Eskaven mutter. Not just on Shabbos actually. Dav Hashem Eskaven we pass mutter and Kollel Herkula, because it's the Dav Hashem Eskaven we pass on Rabbi Shimon's mutter. But the Gemara says in a number of places, Moder Rabbi Shimon b'psik reisha v'lo yamas. If it's a psik reisha, meaning if it's in the malacha that could result is not just it could result, but it's inevitable that it will result. It will definitely result, this malacha, from my doing what I'm trying to do for a permissible gain. I'm for sure going to, at the same time, causing something to happen which is non-permissible, which is forbidden Shabbos. So Rav Shimon's mode, you can't do that. That's us to do. And the primary case of the Gemara is psik reisha v'lo yamas. The Gemara's psik reisha means cut off its head. If you cut off the head of a chicken, v'lo yamas, the Gemara says, you think you can cut off the head of a chicken and not kill it? It won't die? So you can say, no, well, I'm not trying to kill it. I just want the head. I want a toy for my child. Play with the chicken's head. Be a nice little toy for my child. So in order to get the chicken's head, I have to cut the head off the chicken. So, but you're not allowed to kill a chicken on Shabbos. I'm not mechaven. I'm not mechaven to kill a chicken. I'm just simply mechaven to remove its head so that I could provide a toy for my son. So that's us to do. Rav Shimon's you can't do that because psik reisha v'lo yamas, you're going to chop off its head and it's not going to die. It's of course it's going to die. It's an inevitable consequence. So that's the key phrase, psik reisha, for anything that's an inevitable consequence, and meaning it's a malacha. There's a malacha which will inevitably result from what I'm doing, it will be a direct outcome. A direct outcome of what I'm doing will be a malacha, even if I'm not mechan for it. It's usher. If it's not inevitable, it may happen. It may happen. It may not happen. It's possible. Then I'm allowed to do it, even though it may happen, and even if it ends up happening, it's not. I'm not guilty of anything. I wasn't over anything.
That's for the oraita. Pasik Rashe. The provision is the oraita.
Yes.
So even if my intention is not to the melacha to happen, it's
as long as it's something positive, and that's what we'll see. Okay. Now there's a big shaila in the poskim in the Rishonim, in Machlokas Rishonim. What about a psik reisha, which is lo nichale? Meaning, not only am I not intending for the malacha to result, but I don't even want it to result, or at least I have no benefit. It lo nichale means I actually don't want it. I'd rather it not happen. Like your case there with the mud there, with the furrows in the field, whatever, or a case where lo ichpas, where I have zero gain from it, zero benefit from it. So I don't care at all. Is that also usher or not? Meaning there is a shita Rishonim, it's famous as the shita of the Aruch. The Aruch holds that if the result that's going to that which is going to result from my action, which I'm not trying to do, that result is something which I have no gain from whatsoever, and maybe even don't want it to happen, then it's mutter. It's mutter for me to do this thing. One of the cases they're talking about is plugging up the hole in a wine barrel with a piece of cloth, which is going to absorb the wine, because there's a hole in the barrel, and if you stuff with a piece of, you take you bunch up a washcloth or something, or a little towel, and you wedge it into that hole to keep the liquid from coming out. But the thing itself is going to get soaked with wine, and then when you pull it out, it's going to squeeze out wine, and wine is going to squeeze out and fall back into the barrel. So that's a psik reisha. And it's a psik reisha that you're going. That's a psik reisha. The nichale that you get the wine squeezes, some of the wine at least squeezes back into the barrel as I pull it out. So the Aruch says it's mutter. So you're allowed to do that because the Torah. Oh, excuse me. I'm sorry. Is that davka is lo nichale? It's not a psik. The is lo nichale. It's lo nichale. Some of the case talking where it's going to go liibud, where the wine is going to go into the wine that's going to go into the ground, whatever it is. Where it's lo nichale, psik reisha, the lo nichale, the Aruch says it's mutter. Tosfos argues. Tosfos argues and says that no, that even if Psik Reisha is lo nichalei, it's still aser. Now, these two shitas are brought in Shulchan Aruch in one place. The Mechaber brings them in Simin Shin Chaf towards the end. And of course we're talking about Orach Chaim, we're talking about Hilchos Shabbos. Simin Shin Chaf in Sif Yud Ches. In this case, a chavis shepekako b'pekak shel pishtan, a chavis which you plugged up the hole with a linen stopper. Listom nekev shebedofna shemotziin bo hayayin. Yesh b'shematir. There is a shita. This is the aruch who's matir to do that. Afal pishi efshish lo yischot. Even though it's impossible that you're not going to squeeze out, some of the wine is not going to get squeezed out when you pull it out. It's for sure going to happen, but it's still mutter. Why? He says, "V'hu shelo yetachtav kli," provided that you don't have a kli underneath it to catch the wine as it comes out, because the kivin sheino nena b'schita zu, since you have no benefit from this squeezing, even though squeezing is a malacha d'oraisa, right? Squeezing the wine out of the things that malacha d'oraisa.
The malacha happens then. It only happens when he pulls it out.
Right. So that's talking about
pulling it.
Talking about but you're allowed to pull it out on Shabbos.
Pull it out, back out.
Yeah. So kivin sheino nena b'schita zu psik reisha. Psik reisha lo nichalei. Umutter. Kivin sheino nena b'schita zu avi psik reisha lo nichalei umutter. That is the sheet of the aruch. Says the Mechaber v'chalku alav. However, they disagree with him. Other Rishonim, Tosfos and other Rishonim disagree with him. V'amru da'af al gav lo nichalei. Even though he has no gain from it, no benefit. Kivin de psik reisha hu aser. Okay, so the Lashon Mechaber says v'yishcholkum. It sounds like that's what the Mechaber holds its usher, and the Bir Halacha points this out that is the mashmos of the Mechaber, that you can't do it, that you shouldn't do it, right? Because he says the Cholkul, they argue the Yesh B'Shemato of a Cholkul alav, but they disagree with him. They challenge him. They say that what he's saying is not correct. Okay, so now. So in the Sefer Kovach Shiurim from Rav Elchanan Wasserman on Meseches Ksubis, in the first chelik of Meseches Ksubis, Os Yud Ches, he wants to say, he brings a hesber to explain what they're arguing about. What's at the core of the machlokas? Why does the Aruch hold its mutter and Tosfos holds its aser? So he says like this, that one could clarify Kira. What is the pshat? And why is a psik reisha normally aser? Let's say psik reisha denichalei. Why is it aser? There are two ways of looking at it. You could say that since you're mechaven to do A, and since B is inevitably going to result, so it's considered you're mechaven for B also. It's considered you had kavanah for that too, because you know it's going to happen. It's for sure going to happen. So even though you say, well, my goal is only to accomplish A, but you are definitely going to be accomplishing B as well. So we look at it like you're mechaven. It's no longer a davar she'eina miskaven. It's no longer. It's considered mechaven for B as well. Or another way of looking at it, says Rav Elchanan, is that it's not that you're mechaven for B. It's that A and B are considered one. If B will always happen when you do A, it will always result in B. So then B is like a chelik of A. It's all one maisa. It's not that you're mechaven for B per se, but doing A is B. The mashal Rabbi Elchanan gives, he's talking about a mashal not even Hilchos Shabbos. It's talking about a nazir brushing his hair. A nazir is not allowed to pull out hair, right? He can't he can't pull out his hair for the whatever period of naziris he has. So he's not allowed to. A sorik, he's asur a nazir to be sorik sa'arosha, to brush his hair, comb his hair, because it's inevitably, it's for sure going to pull out hairs. So he says, what's the pshat? What's the isser? The isser is either that, since it's definitely going to all happen, he really just wants to comb his hair. But since combing his hair is for sure going to pull out hair, so one way to say it is that we look at it like he's mechaven, ki'ilu he's mechaven to pull out his hair. Or the other way of saying he's not mechavan to pull out his hair per se, but brushing hair is pulling out hair. Brushing or combing one's hair is an act of pulling out hair. It's together. He says, "Kivan de srika hu psik reisha latlisha." Since combing is a psik reisha of pulling it out, nimsa de tlisha b'chlal srika. The tlisha, the pulling out the hair, is a chelik of the ma'aser srika. V'sagi b'mashem mechavan l'srika. It's enough just to be mechavan l'srika to be chayiv on the tlisha. Av she'ena mechavan l'tlisha. That tlisha nechalel is basrika. The tlisha is a chelik of the srika. So he says, this could be the machlokas between Tosfos and the Aruch. The Aruch will hold the first way. That we don't. It's not this one thing. We don't say srika is talisha. It's just that since you're mechaven for this, but since you know that the second thing's going to happen also, we consider it's ke'ilu you're mechaven for that. So the Aruch will say, fine, but that's only when I'm nichale. That's only when I want the second thing. When I want the second thing to happen, so the Torah looks at it like I was mechaven to do the second thing too. But if I don't want that second thing, I have no desire whatsoever. It might even be a negative for me. I certainly not a positive. I have no rutzon in pulling out any hair, or no rutzon in doing the secondary act. Memela, you can't say I'm mechaven. So I wasn't. So it goes back to this. Here I was only mechaven for the first thing. If I'm pulling a bench, I'm pulling a heavy bench. See, this is one of the key cases the Gemara talks about, the case of psik reisha, when the bench is very heavy and it's going to make furrows in the ground. So if I'm pulling a very heavy bench, so if I have hana from those furrows, if I gain from them, if it's something positive, something good for me, so then it's psik reisha nichali. So then we look at it. We look at like you're mechaven to make the furrows as well. But if they're detrimental, if I don't want them, if they're bad for me, or have zero toelis in them, so then you can. It's like I was mechaven. When I was mechaven to that, that was totally out of my radar. Totally not focused on that, not thinking about that. I don't care about that. I don't even want that. So you can't say it's mechaven. But Tosfos argues and says, no, that's not the pshat. It's not the pshat that we look at you mechaven for A and mechaven for B. So you could say, oh, in this case, I wasn't mechaven for B. But B is A. B is a chelik of A, or A is B. But you're doing A, you're doing B. It's one ma'aser. Pulling a heavy bench on soil is an act of making furrows. It's not just an act anymore of transporting the bench. It's an act of making furrows. And combing your hair is an act of pulling out hair. It's hainu hach. It's not that as mechav. It's two acts by as mechav for both. So you could say only when it's nichale. No, the Torah looks at it like the resultant act. It's the thing that's going to result from the action I'm planning to do is like it's a ma'aser of doing that as well. So I only have to be mechaven for the first thing, and that encompasses the second thing. So then it's not going to help you to be not lo nichale. So what, lo nichale? Doesn't make a difference. Lo nichale only helps if you say that we have to look like you're mechaven on both. So you can say, well, obviously I wasn't mechaven to do something which is going to harm me. But if we say, no, the second way, I don't have to be mechaven for both. By mechaven for this, that includes the second thing. That includes the result. It's all one. It's a package. So if it's a package, once you mechaven for the first thing, so then it's automatic kavanah for the second thing, and it's usher. But it's still a malacha shein tzricha l'gufa, right? It's not your kavana. Your kavana in, let's say, coming here on Shabbos and you're pulling out hair, right? Your kavana, your desire, your goal in combing your hair is not pulling out the hair. It may be part of your ma'aser, like the second way of learning. It may be considered that by combing my hair, I'm doing a ma'aser of pulling out hair, which is goes on Shabbos. But it's not. I'm not doing it for the purpose for any. Not for the purpose of the hair, not for the purpose of thinning out my hair or using the hair or anything. So he says, well, then it's a malacha shein tzreicha l'gufa, right? You're not doing it for the purpose of the Mishkan. When I'm making the furrow in the ground, it might be considered that I'm a chaven for making the furrow because it's all part. Making the furrow is just part and parcel of pulling the bench. So it's ki'ilu is mechaven for that, but not for the purpose. The purpose of the Mishkan is to have furrows for planting. I wasn't mechaven. So because of malacha shein tzricha l'gufa, which we hold is only d'Rabbanan. It'll be totally on that it's a machlokas, but the malacha shein tzricha l'gufa is asur min Torah, chayim min Torah, and only asur min d'Rabbanan. So if you hold malacha shein tzricha l'gufa is only asur min d'Rabbanan, so memela by doing this psik reisha de lo nichale, even though it's considered that your kavanah extends to the secondary part, but only b'toras and issa d'rabbanan of malacha shein tzricha legufa. Okay, let's go into the Arif and
So,
yeah.
it's with the fish chicken in the head.
Yeah. Right. So it depends. If you don't want the thing dead, you want the chicken. So I would say also, then it's you're not mecham. It's malacha shein tzricha legufa. So you won't. It will be chayiv. If you hold like this, it's only us in But